Well, we're here again for another episode of the NoBondsCast. I'm here. My name is Ben Beck, co-founder of Bode, along with the other co-founder of Bode, Jim Bode. Today we're doing things a little bit different. First of all, we're in person. That's a good thing,
Together,
right? Together. In the previous episodes, as if you've been following along, we've been bringing on a member of our team. So whether that was Tammy Storkel out in Michigan or Eric Beck up in the Salem office, and more recently was, I believe, Ashley Kotler, who is a part of the Dedham team, living and working out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Today, since we're so close to a very special day to us, right? Father's Day, we thought that we would get together and talk about some of the things that are, I would say, somewhat applicable to our jobs and how that relates to our home life with our spouses and our kids and everything. So, and it's a fun time of year, right? It's starting to get warm out and a lot of things going on. So we thought we'd talk about that today.
I think it's a great idea. I think we should start off by talking a little bit about Father's Day in general. And is Danielle getting you anything good for Father's Day?
No, she's not. She always says that, though. She'll end up, because she is actually a fantastic. I mean, if there's a superpower that she has, amongst many, she has very many superpowers. I just want to make that clear. She is an amazing gift giver, so she'll say things like that. But then, something will appear at in the morning on Father's Day. So she's great. But yes, she is.
And I think in my house, what's really interesting is my kids are really the ones that get excited about Father's Day and about finding what those gifts are. And as they were younger, it started off maybe as a couple of notes that they would leave, and now it's which to me was the most meaningful. And now my daughter's the one that still continues that process. And my two boys walk down and say, "Hey, Dad, Happy Father's Day," and that's good enough for them. And I'll take it.
What does she do? Does she create her own card, or what? How does she?
Oh yeah, everything is either books that she stapled together with notes about things that she's thinking about, or just little sticky notes that sometimes she might just lay on our beds at night or whatever it is, which is fun to come in. And it's the surprises, the random acts of kindness that a 11-year-old daughter gives you.
Yeah, and then each year they get older, those random acts of kindness
come less and
less, right?
But still meaningful. Still meaningful.
Well, it just makes them so much more meaningful when they come a lot less often, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. So, well, we got a list of things to kind of talk about here that we've made. So, first thing I think is a good thing to start with is as it applies to financial values that we've taught our kids. What is an example of a demonstration where you've seen some of those values come out in your own children?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, really for the both of us, because of the way we were brought up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm coming from parents who were pastors, and Ben, who had parents as teachers. So the finances weren't just rolling in the door. I mean, everything that we did as a kid was very thoughtful, intentional acts when it came to money. And I think me as a parent, one of the things that I'm trying to instill in my kids is the value of money and understanding how far money can go when they're buying something from CVS, which in high school now, when they have open campuses, I get text messages from my kids, "Can you add some money to my Apple Pay?"
Yeah.
All the way down to family vacations that we might be doing, and as important as some of the cars that you might be driving. So when it comes to me and my family, is I still try to put and tell them the importance that money matters, and how you spend it makes a difference, and you can make decisions on how you want to spend your money. But realizing that you work hard for your money, and that the decisions you make have a direct impact on whatever financial decisions you're going to have in the future.
Do you find that each of your children, for those who don't know, Jim has 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and do you find that they have different attitudes towards how they operate when it comes to money?
So it's funny, is Krista's my wife, and I talk a lot about this, is our oldest is 18 now and going off to college in the fall. And he grew up differently when it comes to finance, because you are at a different stage.
Earlier in
our careers, right? I mean, and he saw Krista at the time when we started off at Merrill Lynch, right? She was working 2 jobs, just trying to figure out how we were going to make this career path work. Compared to Anna, that she's now 11, and we've been doing this longer together than she's even been alive. Yeah. So our kids have had a very different impact on finances based on their birth order.
Sure.
So Luke is much more cognizant about money. He's thinking about a lot more about what are we doing for dinner tonight. Where Anna might look at me and say, what's going on with DoorDash? Where are we ordering from? So those little things, just on even how and where we were at our stage of our careers, has had a different impact on our kids.
I think actually Danielle and Krista, when we first made the decision to go independent, do you remember what they said about the finances?
No.
I think they both were talking. They say, whatever you guys do, don't screw up the health insurance.
Yeah, that was
right?
important.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was important because at the time when we opened Beck Bode, it was February of 2013.
Correct.
Right? And Griffin, my second, was just about to be born. He was born April 16th. And so that was a big deal. That was a big deal to them, certainly, right? Is that you've got a young family and making sure that whatever the heck you do, don't mess up the health insurance.
Yeah. But I mean, I'd be curious with your kids. So I already had two. My oldest, now 18, and my second one, Matthew, who is now 15, were both alive when we started Beck Bode.
Yeah.
Right? And Anna was on her way.
Yep.
Your kids experienced something a little bit different. And when we think about the value of money and the things that they've experienced, how do you address it with them?
Oh, what's interesting about that is, it never ceases to amaze me how much they pick up just in, because, even before COVID, we worked out of the house a little bit.
Yeah.
They hear conversations, whether it's conversations between me and Danielle, or it's with clients on the phone. They pick up certain things along the way. And so, if you were to ask, especially, like Nolan, who's 6 years old, is what I do, he might say something like stocks, or he may something like money, and he might, but, over the course of the years, I've seen firsthand, they, like Griffin, my son, will ask, or years ago, oh, CVS, oh, Lululemon, are these companies that you work with too, and things like. So it's interesting, just like you shared, how that affects each child a little bit differently. But one of the things that stands out to me, another one for Griffin, is that from a financial standpoint, he's the most dialed in financially. I think he's very conservative. I'm not sure what side of the family he gets that from, but he's very conservative with respect to how he operates, to the extent, and he's sort of entrepreneurial. Yeah. So over the past year or so, he's actually started to go on to eBay and sell. He first started selling, I don't know where he got the idea of selling his old baseball cards on eBay. And now that's graduated to, as he's gotten older with sports, selling his old baseball and other sporting equipment, which I find interesting because none of that money comes back to us.
That's what I was going to say. You're the one who bought it.
So we bought it, or Santa bought it.
Yeah.
Right? We bought it, or Santa bought it. He's selling it. I'm actually paying for the shipping.
Yeah.
To take him down and package everything, and then he's selling it, and I get a little bank account set up for him, and the money goes in. He checks the bank account all the time, which he thinks is really cool. But that doesn't get back to mom and dad somehow. Yeah. It's pretty funny. So yeah, they have a different. I think each child has a different impression, and you're right, based upon birth order. I think they just have a different experience, right, with how money works in the household.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They hear what we're talking about, right? We are working out of our houses, or we're having Zoom calls on, and I would say on a regular basis now. And I know where I'm set up in my house. In particular, my oldest listens a lot. Not necessarily to who I'm talking to, but more of what's being discussed. And whether it's financial planning or retirement or IRAs or Roths, he starts asking me questions now. Yeah. He starts saying, well, what type of account should I have? And we obviously started with a bank account with Luke, I think when he was 16, when he first got his job, to where he was earning enough money through the job that we did open up an IRA. We opened up a Roth IRA, so we had to explain the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. And then we asked him, well, what are you going to invest in? And of course, I didn't just let him go and say, well, I heard about whatever company was on the news. We took him through our process where he's read the book, Dancing with the Analyst, and we showed him the list of companies that we might own, where now he's tracking what's important to us, which is the future earnings of companies. And what was really interesting was when the market was going through some volatility earlier this year, he would open up his Roth IRA and it was making him a little nervous. Right? He was like, Dad, what's going on?
I had this much. Now it's down to this much.
Yeah. And of course he's asking, well, what do we do? And I was like, Luke,
Dad, you're not doing your job.
I was like, I look at him and I was like, Luke, you have another 50 years until you're going to be touching this money.
Yeah.
And the idea is that we're going to keep owning good companies that we expect to be great.
Sure.
We're going to keep adding money as you continue to work so that this is going to be a really meaningful part of your retirement in those 50 or 60 years.
You put yourself in Luke's position, right, as an 18-year-old. Now think of yourself as an 18-year-old and being afforded the information that Luke or any of your kids or my kids are this early in their life. I mean, what stands out to you the most about that?
It's the value of money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about the impact that Luke can have on his financial future with the decisions he's made starting at 16 years old, it's pretty impactful. And I can remember early on one of our clients was transferring over their child's account, and the child's account was worth, I don't know, a couple $100,000 at the age of 21. And we went to them. Do you remember who this is? And we went to them. Absolutely. We're like, what do we do? Yeah. Or how did this happen? And it was a retirement account. And literally he just looked at us and said, we've been contributing from the day she could start working. Yeah. She was contributing, and it's the power of compounding and adding funds over years and years.
That was a really great thing to see. I remember that. Yeah.
So teaching these kids, or our kids at a young age, that not just the value of money, but really the importance of investing and handling volatility at a young age is just going to make them better long-term investors.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Early on, I mentioned in this podcast that my parents were pastors, your parents were teachers, and obviously over the years we learned a lot. And I'd be curious about some of those lessons that you might have learned in childhood that's either impacted some of the decisions you're making now as an adult, or maybe some of the decisions that you're trying to put in your kids or through your kids.
Yeah, probably the most impactful one that I can think about is, or I can remember is, and I just wrote a blog about this more recently, was when I was in 5th grade, my dad started a lawn mowing business. And basically on a whim. So we had a pickup truck, an old Ford Ranger. He got me and my brother together. We bought 2 lawnmowers and a weed whacker, and when we basically advertised and went out and started mowing lawns in and around where we grew up. And that was probably the most impactful scenario for me growing up, because it taught me a number of things. It taught me about what it means, without knowing it at the time, what it means to be an entrepreneur. To just, if you have an idea and you have something of value that you can benefit somebody else with, whether it's information or a service or a product, and you have the willingness to go out there and start, it's incredible what can happen. And my definition of incredible back then was I got paid $5 a lawn. And as a, 11 or 12 year old, we mow 6 or 7 lawns a day in the summertime and come home with, $35, $40 in my pocket. I mean, that could easily, that's the equivalent of $1 million as a kid, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden it gives you independence and freedom. Now, my version of that was I'd go order myself a large pizza at Willow's Pizza in South Portland. As many people know, that's my reward a lot of the times is something to eat. But it's something that I always, in starting Beck Bode and going back before that, it's that theme of like, if you have something that you believe in and that's a great service to somebody else, and you're willing to go and figure it out and fail along the way a little bit to figure and quantify what's going to be the most impactful, that was one of the biggest lessons that I ever learned. What about you?
And it was, on yours, it was an unintentional lesson. It wasn't like your father was going out there trying to teach you about being an entrepreneur. It was just something that he was doing maybe for himself. Yeah. So I go back to my first job, and I was delivering papers. And I remember that it started off that my siblings, I'm the youngest of 4, so my older siblings, it was kind of passed down to us when we got to a certain age that we would go out there and delivering papers. And other than the early mornings, the hardest part of the job was actually at that time I was going there and collecting the cost. Once a month I would show up at somebody's house and say, hey, you owe me $2 for the papers. Right?
I was going to guess getting up early in the morning.
Well, I was getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
So my first job was delivering papers, kind of figuring out how do you work with clients, how do you talk to them about asking them for something that you've done for them,
Ask
the
them
cost
to pay.
of it to pay,
Right.
And then what do you do with that money? And I wasn't buying pizzas. And if anyone saw pictures of me as a child, it was probably a good thing that I wasn't buying extra pizza. I was buying those baseball cards that I could probably go and sell on eBay right now
well,
for. I might call.
I know a guy that can facilitate that for you.
I might know somebody there. But it's for me it was a job at a young age, right? Did I have to have a job? No, right? But if I wanted extra things in life, whether it was baseball cards or pizzas, and I wanted a little bit of that independence, I needed a job. And to go now to my kids, I didn't have to force my kids to get a job. Right? That was instilled on Luke when he got to a certain age. He was like, hey, I need to go find a job because I want money for extra things. So I would like to think that without me even intentionally telling him that, hey, it's important to get a job, he felt like it was.
Yeah, I like that saying. It makes me think of caught, not taught.
Right.
You know, they see the things that you demonstrate versus the things that you actually tell them, which is really interesting. Yeah.
So we're also in an interesting year with our kids where I have our oldest is going off to college and thinking about some of those lessons that he's learned. Choosing the right college, obviously we've talked about this in the past, is a big decision. And what I found really interesting is you go through the application process to college, and with your acceptance letter, you're also told how much merit aid you're going to get. And obviously the kids see that, and they see the cost of college. And naturally, Luke is looking at me saying, okay, are we ready to pay this? Because this is a lot of money. And it is. It's a big financial decision.
Yeah.
But I would say we've included him in all financial decisions.
That's great.
When it comes down to this. And letting him know that this is a big commitment financially for mom and dad and him, because he's got some skin in the game.
And it sounds like he understands this too, right?
He does.
I would say that's something that when I was 18 going into college, I didn't quite understand how much, but certainly like you, right, understanding, hey, I know it's enough money where we need some help, for sure, the way we grew up.
Yeah, and it was probably in your house, I'm guessing, I don't know the answer to this, but finances were not talked about.
Yeah.
Right? Finances were not discussed at all with the kids. My kids are very aware of finances. Maybe not a personal income, but the cost of life.
Yep.
And the luxuries that we might have, or the things that we say no to, there's cost to that.
Yeah.
So I think my kids, and I'm guessing with yours, are used to having money conversations, which I think is really healthy dialogue.
Yeah, in actuality, in my house growing up, not only was my dad a math teacher, so that was always something that I was stronger at. But my mom was actually very active in sharing in terms of, and I was interested in terms of, again, this is not something kids know about nowadays, but remember balancing a checkbook?
Oh yeah.
You have those things, and you're if I wrote a check, I got to put down the debit here on the ledger. Obviously, everything's electronic these days, right? So the idea of balancing a checkbook really isn't a thing right now. You just go check your balance online. But that was something, that combined something that I loved with math and figuring things out. And it combined money growing up. And, my kids today are, like yours, they are involved in the conversations, but like we were talking about before, they're hearing a lot of this stuff on a very daily basis being discussed. Every once in a while they have a question about, hey, Dad, what the heck are you talking about? And this and that. And it gives me the opportunity, which I think is always good for you and I and everybody that works here, is to say, are we explaining things to our clients, in a way that makes sense? Because we do this every day, right? So a lot of this stuff can be second nature. But actually talking to our children about it, at least from my perspective, helps me understand, hey, what are the things that I kind of glaze over that maybe I should take some more time with so they understand, these differences in the markets or in the economics.
Yeah, I'll say my mother still balances a checkbook.
Ah, good. Yeah, old school.
Old school still does that.
Yeah.
And we talk about clients and client meetings, and a lot of my conversations with clients recently has been, are you talking about finances with that next generation and with your kids, and trying to encourage those types of conversations, because I think it makes for a much healthier relationship with your kids, and obviously about our personal financial future as well.
Yeah. And in the fact that you and the rest of us can be that agent that brings a topic to a family that may not be discussing finances, with the kids or with beneficiaries, I think is a pretty interesting thing that we can be doing, because we know from all of our experiences, right, that a lot of people's attitudes towards money does come from, of course, your folks, right, your parents, and whether or not that was discussed, and whether or not money was a stress in the household or it wasn't, or how money was spent. So that's a pretty interesting topic that we're right at the center of too.
Yeah, and it's fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I sit with Luke and we look at his retirement account, thinking of an 18-year-old as a Roth IRA, and talking about the holdings and talking about adding money to it and the long term. That's, to me, that's fun, and I think that's a very healthy relationship to have with investing.
Well, maybe a good segue to close us out. Like, what's one money lesson you hope to pass on to your children, your family going forward?
I mean, you talk about selling baseball cards on eBay. I love the fact that we can instill in our kids that being an entrepreneur is actually a really positive thing.
Love that.
And it's okay to take some risks, especially early on in your career, that's going to put you in a position in the future to either be a business owner or to try something you might not have expected. What about for you?
Stop spending it. That's it. No. In all seriousness, I love what you said about being an entrepreneur, because that's something that obviously to both of us is an incredible thing. But one of the things that stands out to me is the power money has in a lot of different ways, good and bad. But the lesson that I always want to instill in my kids is that you handle your money appropriately and for the right reasons. That what it buys for you is an incredible amount of independence and freedom as you go forward to make the decisions that you want to make, to do the things with your family that you want to do, and that's, I think, just an incredible lesson to learn. So that's what mine is. So awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun, Jim. Good to get together in the office here and do a little NoBondsCast live in studio, and great to see everybody and have everybody on this special Father's Day edition. And hope to see you guys in the next couple of weeks with our next guests in the next episode of the NoBondsCast. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.